Okay everyone, so this is just the rough draft of my video. So my video is going to be on the EMF, which is the electromotive force, and the terminal voltage. So I'm going to explain the two, and then we're going to talk about the relationship between them. I think the first thing that's going to be important to understand is the symbols. They go into creating a representation of a circuit. So here we've got our battery. So that's a symbol for a battery. And then we've got a resistor here. And the resistor can be something like a light bulb or whatever the battery is going to be powering. And then when we're drawing I think it's important to understand first off what a battery is. So I'll just explain that pretty briefly. But right here we've got our anode, and then right here we've got our cathode. So there's going to be electrons contained. So we got that. So we've got electrons that are contained in this cell, and they're traveling. There's a barrier here, so they can't travel through this barrier. So instead, these electrons are going to travel through this copper wire or whatever else it might be. So the electrons are going to be flowing in this direction. What's important to understand though is that although electrons are traveling in this direction, we actually show it in physics as traveling in this direction. And that's just because we didn't, or the people that came up with this theory, they didn't fully understand it before they actually started to do the math for it. So if we've got our battery here connected to a resistor, it's going to be traveling in that direction. So within a battery, so all voltage sources have essentially two parts. So they have a source of electrical energy, and that is said to have a characteristic electromotive force or EMF. And then it's going to have an internal resistance. So that's what a battery has. So the EMF, defined in simple terms, is the potential difference of a source when no current is flowing. So we're going to say that EMF equals terminal voltage. So if there is no current, and current is just represented by I, if no current is flowing. So EMF is essentially the theoretical voltage that you would get out of a battery, but a battery is going to have internal resistance when it flows from the negative end here to the positive end. And then also I'll explain this a little bit later. But a bigger battery is going to have a lower EMF, whereas a smaller battery is going to have a higher EMF. So that's one of the reasons why you can get two batteries that are both, say, 12 volts. And obviously the smaller battery can't power something as powerful as the larger battery. So this could be like a motorcycle battery, and this could be something like a car battery. Okay. So if we're looking at the relationship between terminal voltage is just represented by V, and then terminal voltage equals EMF, which is kind of the theoretical voltage without any internal resistance. But because there is internal resistance, this is going to be related to the amount of current. So this is current, and this is the internal resistance of the battery. Internal resistance. So, really quick before I forget, the symbol for EMF is we've got this little battery sign, and then we've got a little resistor sign going like that. So, when I wrote these earlier, well, we'll say that this big E is the EMF, but when I wrote this earlier, this and this are essentially equivalent. They'll usually just write it out like this. Okay, so we've got, so E, this is our whole EMF. I think a good way to think of the terminal voltage is if you're at the top of a hill, the potential energy equals mgh, and this is like the terminal voltage. Okay, so we've got terminal voltage, and this is the theoretical amount of energy that you have. The thing is when you're actually, if you got a little cart rolling down this hill, these wheels are going to actually heat up due to friction. So potential energy, I'm sorry, this is not terminal voltage. This is EMF. Or it's like the EMF, okay? So it's not the actual EMF, it's like the EMF. So the terminal voltage is like the potential energy. Oh, potential energy equals mgh minus friction, okay? So the amount of energy we have is going to be your potential, your theoretical yield of energy minus the friction. And this friction is being lost as heat. So in a similar way, in a battery, you know, you've got your positive end, your negative end. It's flowing through a wire. So electrons are going this way. Remember, current is going to be shown as going this way. Okay. Got a little music in the background from my roommates. Okay, so we notice that temperature increases in a battery as electrons flow from the negative end to the positive end. So this increase in temperature is coming from internal resistance. Okay, so it's coming from internal resistance. So if we go back to this equation, if you increase the current or you increase the resistance, then the terminal voltage is actually going to go down. So you're going to take the theoretical yield of volts that you would get if there was no internal resistance. Or if there was no current flowing, sorry about that. And then you subtract that from current minus internal resistance, okay? So I hope that made sense. So we've got, as an overview, we talked about EMF and terminal voltage. EMF is your theoretical yield of how many volts you get, whereas terminal voltage is the actual amount of volts you get flowing into the system. So although you may have an EMF or a theoretical yield of 12 volts, what may be flowing through here may be a little bit less than 12 volts, so it might be something like 11.5 volts. And the 11.5 volts is going to be your terminal voltage, and your 12 volts is going to be your EMF. So overall, you only get 11.5 volts that are actually flowing through the system. And then we've got our equation, V equals EMF minus IR. So you increase current or you increase internal resistance, and the total voltage, the terminal voltage, is going to decrease. And then this last thing again real quick, what I was showing here is that the EMF is the theoretical yield. So hope that all made sense. We've got that as an overview. Thanks, guys.